And straight from M-Pesa, we're joined by Safaricom CEO himself, Michael Joseph, for the first time on the show. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
The ideal question at this point is there a point where M-Pesa is to become a standalone product?
I don't think so, no. I don't think. It's very successful, of course, and we have many now, probably 7 million people now using it. But it's very difficult to be a standalone product from a profitability point of view. It really does need the network behind it and supporting it, because you can see the transaction fees are very, very low, although we have many transactions. So it's quite expensive to operate. So there's not a big margin in the business, and we prefer to keep it that way.
So M-Pesa will always remain as a value add for Safaricom?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. SEACOM has recently landed, actually did later last week. Teams did land a little earlier. What is Safaricom's position in all this? When do you switch it on? That's what Kenyans want to know. Well,
first of all, we are a major shareholder in Teams. We're a 22.5% shareholder in Teams. And we also have a position in SEACOM as a customer. So we have some capacity on SEACOM, which we've already cut some of our network over to the SEACOM capacity, which we intended to do anyway. So I think we'll see Teams come commercially on air probably at the end of August. I think that's when we'll see Teams come on air. I think they're two different cables. Teams is going through a very intensive testing process, stabilization process as well. So we want to make absolutely sure that we have the best service delivery for our customers. So we've got feet in both cables.
You said you have about 20,000 megabytes of capacity, if I remember that right. But you're already testing this right now.
Yes.
When does the average Safaricom consumer who's on 3G or who's probably on edge begin experiencing this? And that's by cost and speed.
I think by speed, if we cut it over on Friday night, actually, onto the SEACOM cable, some of our network, and particularly the edge and the 3G customers. So you would have experienced the speed over this weekend. And we've had many reports that people have seen the actual increase in speed. When the cost will come down, I think we still have to see what costs are going to be from Fujairah onwards. That's, the cable goes to Fujairah, and from there we have to pay for additional capacity. I think you're going to see costs probably come down over the next 3 to 6 months. It won't come immediately.
By what percentage will these costs come down?
That's difficult to say. I think it depends on the capacity that you buy and what you're going to use and where you're going to with the cable. So if you're going to voice, I think you'll see some marginal decrease, because already voice is very cheap, international calls. The calls to US and England probably will come down a little bit more. If you're buying just data capacity, I think you can see a bigger percentage decrease coming. Maybe between 10, 15, 20%. And eventually I think it will continue to go downwards.
My layman's understanding of it is that you're buying international bandwidth at almost, I think, 90% cheaper. So why shouldn't I, as a consumer, experience that?
Oh, I don't think it's 90% cheaper. But I think, first of all, there's a huge cost to recover. We paid, the capital investment that we made was for Safari. Well, the total cable was about $107 million. So we have to have some way to recover some of that cost as well. Then we have to pay for the onward transmission from Fujairah onward. And then there's quite a big cost on a monthly basis for the maintenance of the cable. So all those costs have to be recovered. So I don't think, although the capacity itself may be, as you say, 90% less, you still have other costs to add on to that before you get finally a final retail price.
On other matters in telecommunications, the new player, Orange, has said number portability is one thing that is really needed in this market to level the playing field. Safaricom has always held a different view.
Well, we looked at number portability about 3 years ago, and we looked at the experience of other countries that have introduced number portability. It's very, very expensive to introduce. It's not something that you just put a switch overnight. It's very expensive. It's millions of dollars for each operator to introduce it. Plus, you have to see if there's a return. Does it work? And if you look at the experience, particularly in South Africa, where they introduced it about 2 years ago, the UK about 3 years ago, it has a very marginal success. Very marginal. Very few customers actually port their number, as they call it, from one operator to another. And it's expensive. It's not free. The customer has to pay. In the UK, it's about £50. In South Africa, I'm not sure what the charge is, but you have to pay. And it has limited success. It looks like it would be nice. And, for some operators, particularly the newer operators, see that as a solution to get more customers. But in the end, it costs a lot of money, and it's not always successful. And we have to look at what other countries have done to see whether we should just copy them and introduce it here, or whether we should see there's not a better way to do things.
Okay, still on competition, again the same operator has introduced an 8-shilling gross-net tariff, which I believe is the cheapest in the market. Is another price war in the offing, and is Safaricom joining in?
Definitely not. The thing is, when you're a new operator and you have very few customers, not saying very few, let's say relatively few customers, you need to get new customers, so you need to engage in these kind of price wars. But in the end, you have to make money. We're a public company. We have, quite a lot of shareholders. We have to satisfy the shareholders. We still have to make money. At 8 shillings a minute cross-network calling, you don't make any money. And you saw recently that Zain actually increased their tariff from 8 to 12 because they realized that they were not making any money. And I think this is you can see these kind of initiatives when newer operators enter the market of cutting prices to attract new customers. Sometimes it's successful and sometimes not. I don't think that's the way to go. I think you have to deliver value for money. We will see prices come down, of course, but we're not going to get into a price war because nobody wins in the end. The customers win in the beginning, but in the end you have to put your prices up to make money because your shareholders demand a return on the investment, just like our 800,000 shareholders demand a dividend.
So Safaricom will not price unprofitably?
Definitely not.
All right. There's also an AGM coming up. We've baptized it a no-frills AGM.
Correct.
Is this a stance you're going forward with?
I think many public companies welcome this. I think every single public company that we've spoken to have welcomed this initiative because you really need the shareholders to come for the AGM, to ask questions at the AGM, to put their point of view across and to get information about the company. You don't want people to come there just for the goodies, which has been happening for many public companies. And this is their money. If we don't spend this money either goes to the bottom line to pay out more dividends or bigger investments in the company. I think it's silly to spend so much money, particularly a company our size with so many shareholders, on something that is just not in the company's interest or in the shareholders' interest in the long term.
Okay, so finally, very briefly, what is the future for Safaricom as a listed firm?
I think we're going to go from strength to strength. I think you've seen the market. You saw the markets going up today again. I think the market is going to go up. I think we're going to go from strength to strength. We've not got back to the 5 shillings, listing price that we started out. And I think many people, including myself and all of my team, would like to see it go to that level. And I think it's going to come. But I think it's going to still take probably about another 6 months to 9 months before we see it get to that level.
All right, Michael Joseph, very many thanks for coming in. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Now, further on, British budget airline Ryanair has reported a net profit